So it's time to address this terrible steering wheel.
Yes, it's a Daihatsu Mira Avanzato TRXS R4. Project Mirabel.
There's just one screw underneath here that holds on this center pad. And now we just need to take this nut off. The next step will be to install the hub to adapt it to the new wheel. But before I do that, I need to figure out which wheel I'm going to put on, because it'll depend on whether there's two different diameters here for Nardi or MOMO. You know, which orientation I put it on in to fit. So here are some of my choices. I have a smaller Nardi wooden wheel. This is chrome underneath here, but I have plasti dipped it black. For a previous project. I had it in the Beat at one stage. I do like a smaller diameter wheel. I'm not crazy about the feel of the wood, but it does look nice. This car does not have power steering, so a smaller wheel may not be the best idea. Another option is this MOMO from a Mark 1 MX-5. It's actually from Mazda. So it says Mazda here on the pad, but here's what's underneath the pad. It's just a lovely MOMO wheel. This is obviously leather wrapped. It's in pretty good condition, and it's actually the exact same diameter as the stock wheel. So I'm leaning towards this one. I think it'll look really nice in here. So the MOMO is now in. The horn button doesn't work, so I might have to put in the regular steering wheel when I'm going to get the car tested, but feels very nice in the hand. I always love the steering wheel. Some other updates here in the cabin are that I took out the stereo. As you would have seen in my last episode, the speakers were completely wrecked. On this side it was completely rusted, on this side it was missing. So I took out the stereo, might as well, and I just have a Bluetooth speaker in there at the moment to get me by. So to replace this big hole in the dash, I 3D printed up something here and fitted this. This is a cup holder from an Alfa 147. And a little coin holder as well. Should do the job perfectly, and much better than the one that was sitting up there and just taped down. I did notice that this was a bit wobbly, and then I realised that it's held on by some double-sided tape. Another thing that I discovered when I was just rooting around the car is that there's a little tray under the seat here. And inside the tray I found an ownership book. And there's some stuff about the RAC, which I guess is from the UK. And an owner's manual. But this is kind of weird because there was an owner's manual in the glove box when I bought it as well. So now I guess I have two. Also in this little tray was an oil filter. So I'm just after buying one of these. This one looks like it's been sitting there a while, but it should be fine. So I'll keep that in stock for a later service. Here is a quick rundown of all the parts that I will be doing as part of the service here. So I've got a fuel filter, it just lives up here. Oil filter lives down here. 4 spark plugs. I've got an engine gasket kit, which is just basically for the valve cover and the spark plugs here. The reason for that is that there's been a repair done to this valve cover with what looks like JB Weld. It looks like somebody's repaired it with JB Weld or something like that. And I have another a whole spare engine, so I'm going to take the engine cover off that one and put this on this. But when you're changing the valve cover over, these gaskets are probably going to get a bit wrecked in the process. So I just got a new set of gaskets for that. These were pretty tricky to source. I ended up having to get them from a site called, I think, Shopee, which exists in Malaysia. and they only ship within Malaysia, so I had to get a third party kind of agent to have the post forwarded to them and then sent on to me internationally to Ireland. But it's all doable. And the last item here is the intercooler. So this is some sort of aftermarket intercooler. I think it has larger inlets as far as the diameter here. The overall size of it is a tiny bit larger, but you're talking very small amounts. I don't think it makes any difference to the performance. And it sits a little bit off where the actual duct is firing the air. So it should be shifted a little bit this way. So I think overall it looks terrible. All the black paint is coming off, so I'm going to put in the stock intercooler. So I'll have to figure out how all the pipe work and all that's going to work. I may need to get some hoses because this is all cobbled together. So to get to the valve cover, I'm going to have to take this intercooler off first, so I'll probably start there. But the very first thing I'm going to do is take off this bonnet. As I've shown in the previous video, it's rusted all along the front section of this really badly, but I have a spare bonnet that I've now sent off to get resprayed in the silver colour. So I'm going to take this off and give me better access, and I'm going to be replacing it anyway. You can tell this intercooler definitely was not made for this car. You can see the diameter of the elbow here drops way down. It's kinked here as well, so maybe that was not making the best seal. The mounts weren't mounted to anything, and this elbow doesn't have a rolled end on it either. This silicone hose it looks like a 45 to 51 mil adapter, but it was obviously meant for a completely different car because it has this pipe coming off it which is just blocked off and doing nothing. So overall, just don't like this. Glad I'm getting rid of it. Well, the valve cover is now off. Don't see any immediate issues. There was one problem taking out the valve cover bolts. One of them snapped, so I will hopefully be able to drill that out and re-tap it, and I can get a spare screw from the spare engine because they're kind of unique in that they have this kind of built-in step or collar. Here's the one that's snapped. So just having a closer look at this engine cover itself, when you take off the spark plug cover here, it has this stamp on it to say magnesium. I seriously doubt it. This looks like plastic, feels like plastic. I don't think it's magnesium, so maybe that's just a model or something. I don't know. That's the Daihatsu logo anyway. But what was interesting back here was on the inside, made in USA. Weird. For a car that was sold only in a few markets, none of them being the USA, I didn't realise Daihatsu made parts like that. So plan is to replace this valve cover gasket as well as these seals that are really crusty in here for the spark plugs. You can see the repair job here that JB Well I was talking about. I don't know what happened here, but anyway, you can see it coming through all the way here as well. So it was obviously a hole or a significant crack. So I will pull the valve cover off my replacement engine and see if that's in better condition. So I'm just installing these new seals into the spark plug holes here, and they are a very tight fit. I'm basically going to use a little bit of silicone spray and then sit it in there and use a 30mm socket and just hammer it down. And they look like this when they're fully seated. So I'm going to take out the spark plugs and have a quick look at them before I replace them with new ones. They don't look too old. I would say that they have been replaced fairly recently. Upon closer inspection, I'm not so sure. There isn't much wear on the actual tips, but as you can see, they're corroded, a bit rusty. So my guess is that these have been in the car for a while, but the car hasn't done a huge amount of miles on them. This is not working out. I think what I'll do is I'll put a couple of drops of silicone sealant on here, and then it should hold it in place. I tried the trick where you use cable ties all the way around, and that just didn't seem to work at all. Well, the good news is it's all back together, and it's great to have the rocker cover that doesn't have any issues there with the JB Weld. The bad news is I was just offering up this intercooler, and when I put it on the mounts, this one up here looks fine, but this one down here, there is no way I'm going to be able to marry up those two hoses. The only guess I have here is that this junction that splits off to the dump valve and then heads over to the intercooler is not a factory part. It must be custom made, and it must have been made for that other intercooler. So for the moment I'm going to have to put back on the other intercooler, but what I might do is try and tart it up a bit, because it's looking a bit sorry for itself, so at least I could give it a fresh lick of paint. Some high temperature paint from Lidl should do the job nicely. Well, that high temp paint worked out quite well. Looks a lot smarter now. Next up is the fuel filter, which lives up here. There's also this metal pipe that is connected to it, and it's quite badly rusted. So I've pillaged this from the spare engine and just polished it up a bit, and this is much better condition. And this is the replacement fuel filter. It's a little bit longer than that one, so I'm hoping it's going to go in without any issues. We'll see. Fuel filter and that metal fuel line are now in. So next up, it's just an oil filter and oil change. It's time for the oil change, and this is where the oil filter is hiding. In here. Try to get a light on that for you. The oil coming out of here is very fresh, so I'd imagine it was being replaced in the last probably 1,000 kilometers. I didn't know what the access was going to be like for this oil filter, so I bought one of these tools and now I just have an extension on this, so this should be super easy. Interesting, they've used a Toyota oil filter, so I'll have to remember this part number. Might be easier to get this locally. Well, that's gone terribly. Two of the bolts snapped as I was putting them in. I don't know, is it due to the excess paint? The paint is very thin, so I wouldn't have thought it'd be that much of an issue. So this is going to be a pain now. I'm going to have to try and get those broken studs out. I don't know if you can see that before I put this bonnet back on. Ugh. Old car things. So I had to drill out those snapped bolts and re-tap it, but it's all back on now and looking good. The colour match is pretty good. Some places were saying that you'd need to paint this wing as well and blow it in to make sure it's the same. I don't know, is it under this fluorescent lights or what, but it actually doesn't look like a great match here on the camera, but in person it's really good. You wouldn't notice it at all. The one last thing I'll have to do to finish this off is, you can see here on the old one, look how crusty that is. There's this foam kind of strip. It's like self-adhesive backed and just stuck on here, presumably to stop it vibrating when you're on the move. This is the one that I took off the red bonnet, this bonnet, before I sprayed it. And the adhesive is gone and it's just absolutely wrecked and crushed in areas, so I don't want to put it back on. There's also a similar kind of a insulation here. This one isn't as bad. I'm not sure if I'll bother replacing this, but certainly I want to put that strip all along here on the front. So I've ordered some from Amazon. It's going to need to be some sort of heat resistant foam to make sure it has no issues in the engine bay. Okay, the foam padding has arrived from Amazon. As you can see, the original padding that was on the bonnet here, that's the one that was taken off the red bonnet that was sprayed silver, and this is the new padding. It's almost identical in every dimension, so that's a good sign. It looks like there is a kind of a crease here and there's a crease here that this follows, so where it is here is this crease here. Seems to go on fairly easy. It's very squidgy stuff. So will the bonnet close? The answer is no, it won't. So where is it hitting? I can see some of the rad supports are leaving an imprint there. Same with all of these on the bulkhead. It's probably just a bit more dense than the old one. You can see it's pressing back up as I'm trying to close it here. Okay, what I had to do was essentially cut this down so it wasn't as thick all the way along. and it seems to close now. Job done. It's about time I got a sticker for this car so that everybody knows its name.